Alright, so let's continue with this. And so far, what have we done? Well, we've textured the eyeballs and the eyebrows and the background, basically. And so let's just take a look, just to double check that everything is fine. And let's hit render again. And basically, that's where we're at so far. Alright, so let's save that. Boom, there we go. Save the snapshots there in the corner, as you can see. So that's where we're at so far, and what we can do is basically texture the body itself. And so let's just hide the background and the sky dome for now. Control H, hide it, and go to show image planes, and let's bring the image plane back in because we can use this to sample the colors. And also it's a bit dark because we darkened it, and so let's just put it back to maximum white so we can see the true colors. Right, okay, so we want to paint directly on the model, so we need to use the 3D paint tool. And another thing is, I want to include the eyelids with the body, so let's just do combine. There we go. So it's one piece. And then you can right click and say assign favorite material, and let's put a new Lambert on it. There we go. So Lambert 2, there it is. And let's we've got to label it. We've got to label the Lambert. And so what we can do, let's have a look. So it's for this is the geometry, that's Lambert 2, and we can say temporary texture Lambert. There we go, that's the name for it, and it should appear in the hypershade as well. There we go, temporary texture Lambert. Where are you? There. And the reason why I've added a temporary material on it is because when you paint a texture on the geometry, it saves the texture to the material. And so I don't want to mess around with the default material that we have in Maya. You know, when you start Maya, you're modeling, you've got the default Lambert material. So I like to put a separate material on there, and it's just temporary, like I said. So once we finish the texture, we can actually plug the texture into the proper material, which is going to be an Arnold standard surface shader material. Alright, okay, so what do we do next? Well, what we need to do basically is go to the rendering menu set, and then I believe under texturing you've got the 3D paint tool, and let's open up the options. Now you can't start painting so far. Let's hold down B and just increase the brush size, which isn't, I thought B increased the brush size. And alright, let's make it really big. Come on. And we can't really see it for some reason. Width, what's width? It's not really scale. Come on. That's really weird. Let's do 2000. For some reason we're not really seeing the brush size. It's all only goes up to 500. I've never faced this kind of situation before. Some surfaces have no file texture. Anyway, let's worry about the brush size later. The point I'm trying to make is the fact that you can see a red X there, which means you can't paint on it, and the reason for that is, first of all, you need to attribute to paint. So we're doing color and assign edit texture. Click on it, and 2K, too big. 1K is fine, and JPEG is fine. Keep aspect ratio, yeah, JPEG, yeah, and assign. There we go. Now we can see the brush size. Alright, now we can make it bigger or smaller. I get it now. That's pretty weird what's going on. Maybe bring the width down. Anyway, let's just play around with it, see what happens. So flood, and we can click on this and grab the eyedropper, and there we go. Happy with that, and just flood the paint. Boom, there we go. It's now blue, and we can go to the color here, and let's sample this dark blue. There we go. And opacity is switched off. And there we go. We had the settings on this. That's the paint effects. We got to go to the artisan. This is the artisan tool because we are artisans. Alright, so we can redo everything now. And so for the flood, click on it, eyedropper, and I'm going to go for like darker blue there, to be honest. There we go. And flood, there we go. That's better. And then we can go to the color and grab this darker blue. And the opacity, and make the opacity 1. And we can start painting the tentacles a darker blue. And again, now if you hold down B, you can actually change the size. And so there we go. All right, we are in business. Look at that. All right. It's a bit confusing at first to use these options. I've used these a few times before, actually, you know, texturing and stuff, and sometimes it still gets me a bit confused. Sometimes you just got to keep your eye on the settings and stuff, and so let's just kind of mess around with some of the settings around here. Let's take a look. And just got to be careful with how you paint everything. If you want to, you can switch off the wireframe. There you go. And basically the tips are kind of like a dark blue. And they kind of look all splashy and stuff. So I'm going to bring the brush size down a little bit to actually start creating some of the make it even smaller. So kind of like that. There we go. Yeah. There we go. It's as simple as that, really. You can just there we go. Yeah, doesn't look too bad. And I guess we could do the same with all of them. Make the brush size a bit bigger and just kind of paint. There we go. Make it a bit smaller. Let's go in closer. And let's just replicate these kind of splash marks. So there we go. again, we just need to do the same with all of them, really. Just kind of getting closer and just kind of create. There we go. Make the brush size a bit bigger and we can just paint the rest in. And that's it basically. You just, you know, paint the just paint away, really. It's that simple. Yeah. And again with this, so you just need to do the splash marks. Let's get in close and just kind of there we go. There you have it. Let's just make this a bit neater. Kind of bring it around a bit better. There we go. Alright, make the brush size bigger because this bit is simple. We just want to paint it all dark blue. There we go. Just make this a bit neater there. There we go. Alright, and we just got the last bit to do. Again, it's the same. You know, just kind of create these splash marks. There we go. And increase the brush size and just paint it all in. There we go. Alright, that's what we've got. If you want to make it a bit more interesting, grab the colour bit here and sample the flood colour, and just make the brush size a bit smaller. Maybe just, paint in some blue spots. Might as well make it more interesting. Why not? So there we go. Want to add a few blue spots. Yeah, kind of looks more interesting like that. Maybe one there. There we go. A couple here as well. Maybe make this. There we go. Kind of bring that in a bit more. Bring that in a bit more. Do a couple of spots. There we go. And go back to colour. And I'm going to sample this dark blue again. And just kind of add a couple of swirls around here to make it more interesting. There we go. I believe that looks a bit more interesting. And just here as well, so go back to colour, eyedropper, let's select this light blue here and just kind of, there we go. And let's see what we got. Not bad. And let's go back to the colour. So we've got this light blue, and let's make it even lighter, like that. And let's bring the opacity down a little bit, say like 0.3. And you can, let's choose like a softer brush. Let's play around with some. Sometimes when you hit B, you switch the channel. We've got to keep it to colour. Once it goes a bit crazy. Right, so let's make the brush size a bit bigger. And maybe just add a bit of bright blue to the whole thing. There we go. Make the brush size even bigger. There we go. With a soft opacity around the mouth region. And let's introduce a bit more colour as well. A bit of orange, why not? There we go. And then we can use blur. We can blur it a little bit. Blur in intensity. Maybe bring it down to 3. Let's blur it and see what happens. There we go. So we're using a bit of blur. Go back to the paint. Let's switch it to like light blue and kind of let's just like mix it in a bit better with the orange. There we go. Go back to the blur. Yeah, it doesn't look too bad. We can go back to paint and just kind of use some light blue around the belly as well. I want to be careful not to hit this tentacle here. That's in the way. Oh, else, you know, it's going to look pretty weird. So there you go. So I'm using a low opacity just to kind of colour in this region around here. And then switch over to the blur and just kind of mix it in a bit better. There we go. Around the edges. So it blends the colours in much better. A bit more blur around here. Around here as well. And basically that's, you know, that's not bad. We've got a lot of around the back. That's when the brush size is a bit too big. You get it around the back here, so you have to be careful with that. Switch off ambient occlusion. Where are you? Just take a look there. Okay, so when you switch it on, what you're seeing is the shadow there. Okay. Okay, back to paint and maybe just a bit more, just kind of like around here. And I'm kind of doing circular motions to get it. So it's not perfect, you know, like skin, you know, skin isn't like perfectly one color. It's got a fine grain to it. So I'll just do circular motions and then switch back to blur and then just kind of gently blur it in. There we go. And that's the seam. So you've got to be careful when painting over seams. If you want to eradicate the seams, then you want to really paint your model in Substance Painter, really, or Mari, to get rid of the seams. So you've got to be careful with that. You see, the seams starting to show. So what you want to do is go back to paint, click on this colour, grab the eyedropper and select this blue and just paint over this area. Let's bring the opacity up to 1. Oops, I've switched channels again by accident. Bring it back to colour. That happens sometimes when you hit B, you see, because B is to change the brush size, but it's also to switch over to bump map, so it can be a bit confusing. So you have to be careful with that. And basically I'm just going to paint the blue over here because I don't want to see the seams, because that will look really bad and amateurish. So There we go. So it's better if we do that. There you go. So we don't see the seams. And then just go back to blur and just kind of gently blur it in. And you're seeing the seams again. So go back to paint and then just paint it back in. There we go. So don't change the colour over a seam. You know, make the seam area one colour, whereas you're going to get to see the seams. That's the limitations of the 3D paint tool in Maya. Oops, what am I doing? And we're not going to see the back because we're not going to render the back, but you know, it's good to just have it one colour. So, you know, 3D paint tool isn't really for hardcore texturing. You want to use a Substance Painter for that, or Mari, or even Photoshop is better. The 3D paint tool in Maya is fairly basic, really. It's just for a bit of basic colouring, that's all. It's not for, you know, hardcore texturing. As you can see there, the seam is starting to show, so go back to paint and then just paint over it. So you've got to make sure that the seams are just like one colour. Alright, I do believe that we are done. Just a bit more blurring around here, just to make it a bit softer. There we go. And maybe just around here, just a bit better. There we go. So, looks a bit better around here as well. Alright, I reckon that will do it. Alright, okay, so just come off it. There we go. And before we come off it, actually, what we need to do is actually save the texture. There you go. Texture is now saved. And there you have it, basically. Control S, save your scene. So what we're going to do next video is get back to it, and I'm going to show you how to plug the texture into the Arnold shader, and we can do more test renders. See you next video.